The Affordable Housing Committee meeting will now come to order. We'll take a roll. Mr. Cooper, I see you on the line. I'm going to ask committee members to please raise their hand, the WebEx hand, and Mr. Cooper, if you'll help me check that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. All right. I have 7, Allen, Mendez, Parker, Sledge, Swara, Taylor, and Toombs. Am I missing anyone? Oh, I see Hauser just joined. Okay. Thank you.
Chair, this is Councilwoman Sepulveda. Did you get me?
Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Well, here.
Yes, I'm showing everyone in attendance here.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm glad for us double checking. All right. Thank you so much. Can I have a motion for the electronic meeting? Will someone please make that motion?
Could you read the motion first, please?
Pursuant to Governance Lee Executive Order number 16 regarding electronic meetings as extended by Executive Orders number 34, 51, and 60, I make a motion that this committee meeting agenda constitutes essential business of the Metropolitan Council.
We can't hear
and
you.
That meeting electronically, is that better? Is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I'll second that motion.
Second.
All right. We're going to have to take a voice vote on every vote. Mr. Cooper, is that right, including this one?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Allen?
Yay.
Hauser? Mendez?
Here.
Parker?
Aye.
Sepulveda?
Aye.
Sledge?
Aye.
Swara is aye. Taylor?
Aye.
Toombs?
Aye.
Welch?
Aye.
And Hauser? Councilmember Hauser?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. All right. We'll go straight into the legislative items. The first one we have is Resolution RS 2020-586. Accepts a grant from the Regions Foundation of Tennessee to the Nashville Community Engagement Fund to support the Metro Bands Housing Trust Fund for Affordable Housing, acting by and through the office of the mayor. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. So I have Miss Hannah Davis. I'm the sponsor, but she is, I believe that she's here and she can speak to this. Miss Davis.
Hello. Yes. Thank you, Chair Lady, and thank you to the committee for reviewing this legislation today. I am very grateful to Regions Foundation. This is separate from the Regions Bank. Obviously, they're connected, but the gift is coming from Regions Foundation. And Latricia Jemison and Lee Banks there approached the Housing Trust Fund Commission about this in the late summer, and we went through the application process and were approved for a $250,000 grant. They shared that the foundation board was concerned with the impoundment of the Barnes funds last year, and they're devoted to affordable housing throughout Davidson County. So not only did they want to make this gift, they also wanted to issue it as a challenge to other philanthropic and corporate philanthropy sources throughout the county to encourage them to get involved in affordable housing in this way. One thing to note is this is the first grant of this size to the Barnes Fund. Traditionally, the fund has been supported only through Metro operating funds. And in the past, the largest grant I believe that we've received is $5,000. So this is a significant increase. And thankfully, the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee acts as the fiscal sponsor, if you will. So that's the fund, the Nashville Community Engagement Fund, that it's being routed through.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have. And I do believe there's a question. The funds will not be used for administration of the Barnes Fund. They were initially just sort of wrapped into the existing RFP. The Regions Foundation Board was confident in the Barnes process and very supportive of the way that we review applications, which we were grateful for that vote of confidence, and wanted to support the best projects that are proposed by our nonprofits throughout the county.
Thank you. Is there any question or discussion from council members, from committee members? I'm looking. Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember. A couple of questions. Someone had raised the question, I think it was Councilmember Hauser, is this added on top of the $10 million that's already there from the city? And I would like to expand that question to maybe asking Hannah if she can provide us with a report on a annual or some kind of regular basis. My understanding is that we currently have sort of three different guardrails around the Barnes Fund. One is now this $250,000 contribution is there, so we know that's a minimum we can't go below. Secondly, we passed a bill in the last term that a year would need to be matched by contribution or expenditures in the Barnes Fund. And then thirdly, there is short-term rental property, hotel motel tax revenue that is designated specifically for the Barnes Fund. And so to me, those are three separate things added together that should be immune to any kind of impoundment or delay. And I would like to ask Hannah if possibly she could be the caretaker of those amounts and maybe help us know what those amounts are and how those are being compared with any money that's being delayed just out of necessity, which I understand. But would just love to get some information back on that. And if not today, then maybe by the next meeting.
Absolutely. That was something that I brought up last year during the impoundment to ensure that we cleared both of those bars. One thing to clarify is it's my understanding that they don't add together, so that they act separately. So we do receive the short-term rental fee, and that last year ended up being just under $1 million. And then the legislation saying that any economic incentive job grants, that Barnes has to be larger than that. And I believe the highest that's been in the past was $4 million. So last year we cleared that, and then this year that would be in flux, and some of those job grants are in flux as well. So I would have to, that's something I'm paying attention to, and I can keep you updated on, if the job grants are approved, that Barnes would have to be approved in a corresponding amount. We have already approved the $2 million that went to New Level. That legislation came across your desks in July. So that would more than exceed the short-term rental permit fee, but I'll, again, have to stay up to date on where the job grant numbers land. Thank you.
And would you be able to provide that data on a more regular basis to the committee? I think that's what Councilmember Allen is asking for, as you're tracking it and comparing it. Would you be able to, if you can send that to the committee, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Councilmember Swan, one final question. if I might follow up on that, then
Yes,
would the short-term rental and this Wonderful Regions Foundation, those would be additive? Is that correct? I guess that's a Hannah question.
The short-term rental fee has not been additive in the past. I think some of the reason is because the short-term rental fee can't be predicted ahead of time. So the back-end accounting shows, the short-term rental fee that comes in and then the additional amount supplemented. But the Regions grant would be in addition to, yes.
In addition to the 10 million, theoretically.
Yes, it is all on hold right now. I want to make sure I'll take this moment to update the committee in case anyone hasn't heard. The Housing Trust Fund Commission reviewed the original Barnes RFP deadline that we had released. The original deadline was October 12th. In response to the referendum, that deadline has been extended to January 15th. So obviously this is not anything that we were wanting to do here at the mayor's office, but in respect for the nonprofit's significant time and investment of funds to get their applications together, we wanted them to be aware that if the referendum were to go forward and to pass, that we would not be able to fully execute on that round.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further Councilmember Van Rees is not on the committee, but if there's no other committee member, I don't see any other hand. Councilmember Van Rees?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that the new level funding that was referenced is still going through. Is that correct, Hannah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So as an overview, because it will pertain to the next piece of legislation about Woodbine, there were 3 grants that were impounded, or their awards were affected last year when the amount was impounded. One of those was New Levels, and one of those was Woodbines. So New Level was very eager to get ready on their project. They had piecemealed things together so that they could maintain site control of that land. So I think it was the very first meeting in the new fiscal year, the committee reviewed that legislation. So that has already been approved, and they've already begun drawing on that amount. And the second one that was affected is in front of you today as well, Woodbine. And I'll speak to that more in a little bit. But yes, Council Lady Van Rees, that award is approved and already through the process.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification, and thank you, Chair, for a moment to clarify.
All right. Thank you. If there's no further discussion, then we'll be ready for a vote. It will be a roll call vote again. And so, Allen?
Aye.
Hauser?
Aye.
Mendes?
Aye.
Parker? Sepulveda?
Aye.
Sledge?
Aye.
Suarez, aye. Taylor?
Aye.
Toombs?
Aye.
Welch?
Aye.
And I go back to Councilmember Parker. All right, we recommend approval, 9 in favor, 0 against. All right, the next legislation before us is Resolution RS 2025-87, amends the grant contract approved by Resolution number RS 2020-289 between Woodbine Community Organization, Inc. and the Metro government, and authorizes the provision of additional grants from the Barnes Fund for Affordable Housing to Woodbine Community Organization for the express purpose of constructing and rehabilitating affordable or workforce housing. Again, this is one of the reasons why I asked Ms. Hannah to come here today. So can I have a motion?
Move. Second.
Thank you. All right, it's moving seconded. Ms. Hannah, do you want to explain this one? I think one of the questions that I had, and I think you've alluded to that in your first conversation as to why there was an increase. If you can explain that, and also is Woodbine the only one? I know you mentioned New Level. Is there any other of the organizations that were impounded that we're looking into making whole again? If you can speak to that before we see if there's any other question.
Yes, thank you so much. So as Council Lady Suara alluded to, I got the chance to provide some backstory on this today earlier to her. So there were three, again, as I mentioned, three grants that were affected by the impoundment of the funds. One was New Level, which has already gone through and their legislation is passed. One was Woodbine Community Organization, and they were the only one that received only a partial impoundment. So originally what the Housing Trust Fund Commission approved, and they're the oversight board for all of the grants, is a $2 million award for Woodbine. However, due to the impoundment, we were only able to award $1.2 million. So under the structure of the impoundment, once the funds were made available, the grant would be made whole. And so that is what's in front of you today, is that additional $800,000. That's an amendment to the existing legislation, and that will bring them up to the award amount that the commission had originally approved, which is that $2 million. So none of the other grants were affected in that way. They all either did not meet the cutoff, and the commission chose not to award them funding, or they received their award in full already. So again, this one is the only one that is a little bit unique in that way. As an overview, it is funding for 324 units. You'll see in the contract it's only 323 of them are affordable. There's a unit on site for a service provider. And the majority of them are at 30 to 60% AMI. This is going to be on Hobson Pike, and the total project cost is a little over $68 million. So it's a significant leveraging of the $2 million that Barnes would contribute.
Any discussion, question? I don't see any ad. Councilmember Hauser?
Yes, I just have one question, Hannah. At the end of your comment, you mentioned leveraging. And I was wondering, is leveraging one of the criteria that you look at when you're choosing which project to go forward with and which not?
It is not. We don't have a set leverage number. We do award points based on additional funding sources as a way to encourage our nonprofits to, basically not just come to Barnes when there are additional sources that they can layer on top. I'm sure everyone has heard me say that Barnes dollars on average are leveraged 5 to 1. That's a metric that we use to showcase the impact of the Metro dollars that are contributed. However, in conversations with our nonprofit partners, we are wary of setting a minimum leverage, because some of our projects, I'll give you an example, work with existing long-term homeowners to help provide updates to their housing so that they can maintain homeownership in quickly gentrifying areas. Obviously that's something that we talk about a lot, and we know the value of helping those homeowners stay in their communities. That's not a project that is eligible for tax credits and various funding sources. There's not a revenue stream, so they're not able to go get CITC or some of the other larger funding sources. So, for example, that pot usually leverages 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 because they are able to use volunteers and donated materials. But then that's balanced out by the larger rental projects that are able to go access some of the larger pools of funding, and then we'll have a revenue stream coming in, over the 20-year affordability period, so that they're able to then layer debt and additional sources on top of the Barnes funding.
Thank you. And I'm not suggesting that we would want a minimum leveraging, but I can certainly see that being one of the criteria that would be helpful. And the reason I bring that up is sometimes some of the smaller projects that may only be 10, 20 units or whatever get sort of pushed down by the projects that are 200, even though the smaller projects may be leveraged with a lot of other outside funds too. So we're really getting more of the bang for our buck. And so that'd be just one of the things that I would like to see get some emphasis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Bowser. And I started the conversation with Anna this afternoon, and we'll go into it when we look into having more discussion for this committee outside of legislation. With our time is very limited for legislation, so one of the things that we're going to look at is set up a date to actually talk more in details. And one of my questions to her this afternoon is how we're making sure that minority organizations and the smaller projects are being taken care of. And so that's something that I think we should be looking at as a committee, but we don't have enough time to do all of that. And so part of the poll that I sent to committee members is actually looking into setting up meetings on off week so that we can delve into these a lot more. There's so much conversation to be had, and this committee is going to have a lot to do, especially considering what the market is going to look like now because of COVID and people losing their jobs and maybe losing their homes. So we'll talk about that at the end of the meeting. Hopefully we can set a time to do that. But I do agree with you that those are the kind of things that this committee wants to know in detail. We just don't have the time to delve into it sometimes during the 15-30 minutes that we have. And so I plan to bring those up and we'll discuss that more in detail. If there's no further discussion, let's go ahead and take a roll call vote on this one. If everybody wants to raise, oh, I have to call it out. That's the rule. All right. Allen?
Yeah, aye.
Hauser?
Aye.
Mendes?
Aye.
Parker? Sepulveda?
Aye.
Sledge?
Aye.
Suara is aye. Taylor?
Aye.
Toombs?
Aye.
Welch?
Aye.
All right. Is Councilmember Parker with us? All right. We recommend approval. 9-4-0 against. 0 abstention. All right. The next one is RS 2025-92. It's appropriate grants, a subrecipient grants agreement funds from the Metro Development and Housing Agency to Metro Action Commission to address rent and mortgage assistance for up to 3 months for eligible households resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
All right, second.
Second.
All right, moving seconded. Is there any discussion?
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I wondered, this is 592 we're on, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
592.
I just wanted to know if there were any restrictions to tenants who are currently receiving Section 8 vouchers in being able to be eligible for this.
I see we have Mr. Cox from Metro Action and Mr. Wilshire from MDHA. Can either one of you address that question? Is there any limitation on eligibility?
Mr. Cox, I can start with that. I think that I'm not sure that there's an actual prohibition, although I'll have to look into that. It's a good question. But practically speaking, if you are on a Section 8 voucher, you are eligible to be recertified if your income drops, and therefore you would not be cost burdened. So you go through a process to be recertified, and then the amount of rent that you pay is adjusted down to 30% of your new income, and essentially the value of the voucher goes up to cover that portion of the rent. And so anyone who's receiving a Section 8 voucher and goes through that process ought to be receiving essentially mortgage assistance or rather rent assistance in that way. So I don't think that they would need this service, but I'm not sure that it's actually written into the rules to be prohibited, although it may. And Mr. Cox, certainly please correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yes, I don't remember anything. And this is Marvin Cox. I'm the Family and Community Service Director at Metropolitan Action Commission. There was nothing specifically as it relates to Section 8. However, this is specifically for individuals who was impacted by their rent, and they must have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yep.
Councilmember Hauser, does that answer your question?
Not quite, because I do know of some individuals that their Section 8 voucher was increased but they're still struggling even to come up with a smaller amount of rent. And that's why I wondered if they would be eligible for this.
Yeah.
This is Lisa McCready from Metro Action. If I can add to what Marvin and Matt said, if you're asking if they would be prohibited from applying, the answer is no. Anyone who meets the criteria of having been impacted by COVID, they are able to apply.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there any other question or discussion? All right. Ready for the vote? Allen? Hauser?
Aye.
Allen?
Aye.
Mendez?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
Sepulveda?
Aye.
Sledge?
Aye.
Suarez, yes. Taylor?
Aye.
Toombs?
Aye.
Welch?
Aye.
All right, we recommend approval, 10 in favor, 0 against. Thank you. Now we're on to bills on second reading. We have BL 2020-456, sponsor Allen and Toombs, amends the Metro Code to require landlords to provide notice to tenants prior to termination of tenancy and non-renewal of a lease. And I have a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move for a one-meeting deferral. I've gotten some good input from people and have some amendments that I would probably like to make, and I'd love to discuss those with this committee, and then have a meeting with the realtors who have called with some input as well. So if I can make that motion and then have some discussion after we vote on that motion, that would be great.
So is the motion one meeting deferral with a re-referral to affordable housing? Councilmember Allen, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yep. I've made a motion for deferral, and I'm not hearing the response.
Oh, you're cutting out.
I second the motion for deferral.
All right, so we need to vote on the deferral motion. All right, Allen. Hauser.
Yes.
Shoot.
Mendez.
Yes.
Thank you. Parker.
Yes.
Sepulveda.
Aye.
Sledge.
Aye.
Suarez, yes. Taylor.
Aye.
Toombs. Well, so 10 in favor, 0 against, the one meeting deferral. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you. So I have had some suggestions about if the 90 days is the most appropriate, if that perhaps would work better if it were a 60-day notification. I would like feedback from this committee on your thoughts on that. And then similar to what Councilmember Taylor had done, because this deals with existing leases, to make it effective 365 days from when the bill is passed would allow people an orderly process for updating leases to include a notification that if you terminate a lease that the tenant assumed was going to be renewed, that you let them know that in an amount of time far enough that they would be able to find new places to live. So this is dealing with the issue that that came up repeatedly as we were talking about Councilmember Taylor's bill, which I think deals with slightly different issues, and that is people believing that they have a place to live through X date and discovering that it's shorter than they thought it was. So if leases terminate, not there are protections spell out for different types of leases, how far ahead of time that has to be for week to week and for month to month, but currently there's nothing that spells that out for a 12-month type of lease. And this would say if you don't have it already written in your lease, that the default would be, currently it's 90 days and what's before us today, but I would entertain an amendment to move that to 60 and would like feedback from this committee on that change, and then also on the effective date.
And Director Cooper, I'm sorry, I think I jumped the gun. I went ahead and got the votes before the before the discussion on the deferral, so that was me jumping the gun. But what I would recommend, if it's okay with the sponsor, is that I am recommending that we have a meeting of this committee next week or in an off week. I think we did that on Councilman Botelho's bill as well, to allow for a lot of conversations around this. If you are okay with that, and then what I would like to do is to set that, just talk a little bit about having that meeting, set that time, and then we can discuss this and some other things, because we barely have time to do anything in this time that we have. And if that's okay with you, I want to ask if you're okay with us actually deferring the conversation on your proposed amendments and the bill as a whole until that that meeting.
That's fine.
Okay, all right. So before we close out, then I guess the only thing I want to check with committee members is that would you all be okay with a Monday or a Tuesday at 5 o'clock for the meeting of the affordable special call meeting of the affordable housing?
Being scheduled for both of those next week.
Excuse me?
Already.
Shh. The thing is going in and out. Councilmember Allen, I cannot.
Thank you. If I'm here, I have meetings scheduled for both of those times already.
All right. Okay. All right. We'll send out another poll.
Okay.
And see if we can do a different time. And so we'll try and I'll try and send out another poll and get a consensus. But we do need to meet outside of this. There's so much to be discussed and so many players that we need to bring to talk to us in addition to your legislation. So look for a poll from Ms. Rosie on a time that works for majority, that we can actually have some of this conversation. Is there any other thing before the committee? All right. If there's none, it's 4:04. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Thank you. We're adjourned.